Welcome to Championship Manager 97-98 edition, which I'm playing again on my phone, and I have been for a while. But this time I'm doing something a little bit special. So this time I'll try to record one of these gaming videos that my sons like a lot on YouTube. So I'm doing the retro version with the 97-98 edition of Championship Manager, which I used to play a lot. And actually I still do, and especially since I managed to install it on my phone, on an Android phone, which I might show you how to do in a later version. But first I'm just making this video. And basically the idea is that we're at the World Cup in '98, where you can see the first few matches have already been played. For some reason that pops up once in a while. But anyway, we've got a Brazilian team which went on to the final in the real world, obviously, with Roberto Carlos and Ronaldo, and Sonny Anderson, and so on. And the American team, which lost heavily in this case. I'm playing as Denmark, and actually that's not really possible in the normal version of the game, but I made it possible because if you're a little internet savvy, you can find instructions on how to do that. You have to go to the editor and sort of tell the game that Denmark is a nation that's playable, and then use the old cheat where you enter your name as the name of the well, actually I'm explaining it a bit backwards. You have to, as your name, you have to enter the name of the current manager of the national team. So in this case I'd have to be Bo Johansson. You can see I've got the Denmark squad right here. Manager Bo Johansson. That's what I entered as my name, and that made it possible to just select that team as a playable team, as opposed to the normal game where you have to choose a club team and sort of achieve the honor that it is to be the national team manager. But I cheated because I wanted to try playing as Denmark in this World Cup, where in the real world we made it to the quarterfinals and lost to Brazil, which was actually quite impressive. Now, I started the game in, well, just before the games that you can see right here, and I don't know why this pops up all the time. But the first few games it didn't go so well, but then I managed to change the formation into a formation that's not totally different from the one that Morten Olsen liked to use on the Danish national team a couple of years later. But I'm using it now. And the players that I have available and the ones that I've chosen, they're not the same as the players that actually went to the World Cup. And the reason is, well, the researchers for this edition of Championship Manager, they didn't really do a good job for the Danish players. A lot of them are, well, just playing wrong, and some are overpowered in comparison to the players that they were in the real world. For example, this guy, I chose to bring him along. He's a bit young, but he's really good, which many of you will know if you've played this game. So I can use him as the backup. And Henrik Andersen, he's actually one of the guys who won the European Cup in '92 in the real world. But here in '98, he's not even supposed to be playing. He retired just before this season in the real world. I think partly due to the injury that he acquired in the '92 Euros. But anyway, I've got some of the players and I'm missing others. Some are overpowered and some are not in the game at all. one player who is in the game, but who isn't a center back like he's supposed to be, is Ole Bure. No, sorry, not Ole Bure. I'm thinking about the other guy. What's his name? Yes, who played for Fenerbahce and who was in the World Cup for Denmark and did very well. And he was in the defense, in the central defense with Morten Vikhorst, who is in this game, but he's just really weak. And yes, is also in the game, but here he's categorized as a right midfielder for some weird reason, and he doesn't look very good, so no reason to select him. But anyway, we've got South Africa, Colombia, and Belgium. The World Cup group tables look like this. So in Group A, we've got presumably Brazil and Romania advancing to the next round. Here we have, I think France and Nigeria ought to be the favorites. Argentina and England, in this case, a pretty strong group, because as some of you will know, the Scandinavian teams were rated quite highly in this edition of the Championship Manager series. So for this reason, I have hopes of achieving to the next round and making it at least to the quarterfinals like the real team. Right. And depending on how this goes and how fun it is, then I might want to actually go and tinker a little bit in the editor and make the team more like the actual World Cup team and the actual players. So let's see how it goes. Anyway, these are the groups. I think it was a pretty decent draw. So my next game is on the 12th, and that's today. So let's see. Well, we've got a few players, 3 players suspended actually. That's not super great, but my first choice as the attacker is Ebbe Sand, who plays in Udinese in this version because he was sold from Brøndby. In the real world he played for Schalke. And I've got both Laudrups, using them on the wings, and for some reason in this game Jonel Thomason is an attacking midfielder center, and he doesn't play very well if you put him in the midfield center, and neither in the attack, so you have to use him as an actual attacking midfielder, and that's what I'm doing. That's part of the reasons why I changed the formation. So I could use this guy who looks really good, but he's only 22, and I think I'll just go with Henrik Anderson, who's just a really cool older guy, and Peter Nielsen, who's also quite good in this version of the game. Actually, there are 2 Peter Nielsens. That's a weird thing and an obvious mistake, but there are actually 2 Peter Nielsens in the game. The other Peter Nielsen is an attacking midfielder, right, left, and center, but they're obviously the same guy. The other Peter Nielsen plays for FC Copenhagen from the start of the game. This guy plays for minor league team, and I've been to the editor and I've seen his stats, and actually it just says Copenhagen with him, which obviously is a mistake because the team's called FC Copenhagen, so that's why the game thinks that he's oh whoops, I don't have Sand either, so I have to use Peter Muller. Oh, sorry, distracted a little bit there, so I have to use Grønkjær, who I chose instead of Martin Jorgensen. I could also use Brian Laudrup in front, but I'll go with Peter Muller and Grønkjær as a substitute, so Grønkjær can go in on the wing instead of Brian Laudrup if it's necessary, because he's really not a target man kind of player. But anyway, Goldbeck, discard. Everything just looks pretty good. The weakest point is the central defense, where I had to choose players like Jacob Friis-h or this guy Brian Jensen. He's actually my first choice right now, but he's suspended and not quite ready. So I'll go with Jacob. And we've got South Africa now, so I think we should be the favorites for this match. Falk as the backup. And then I chose Rene Henriksen. And went with this little bit risky libero kind of role for that guy. Normally it would be someone who really count on as one of the key players, but I just chose him. And I really like Rene Henriksen in the real world, but see how this goes. There was a lot of talking to begin with. Now let's have some. And I'm playing this, like I said, on my Android phone. And normally what you would do if you played this in the 90s, you'd know this. You have to use your keyboard, and I'm using the keyboard like this, and then press the space bar in order to speed it up a little bit. And that's what I'll be doing in the first match, because I won't be making any managerial changes in this first half anyway. Did I say match? I mean first half, obviously. So, looks like we're getting a fair amount of chances. Right. Yellow card. Right. So, maybe it's a... No, I was just about to say that it looked like a goalless first half, but we're taking the lead with a goal from John Dahl Thomason. Or, well, being a Dane, I might as well just say the names in Danish. Jon Dahl Thomason. And I'm trying to keep this in English, by the way, and that's because really it's a niche genre. I don't know who wants to look at me playing games that are 30 years old, but well, 20 years old obviously, but anyway, just an exaggeration for some reason. Heinze doesn't play very well, so, but still there's no need to make any changes, because I'm not really scared of South Africa, and I want to see how well they will be performing in the roles that I've chosen for them. So I probably won't make any changes until like 60th minute. Oh, and that's my son. Probably a bit surprised that I'm trying to actually do this recording. We actually failed in an attempt to try this a couple of days ago, but now I'm playing the World Cup. Right, so he probably thinks I'm a bit weird. He's 11 years old and plays games from this century, this millennium. There you go, Brian Laudrup. So, we're up 2-0 and things are looking good. Right, let's see what the stats look like. The match stats, well, we're just in control of everything. Heinze has a yellow card and doesn't play very well. He'll be getting the substitution now, and Thomason is performing amazingly, but we don't really need him to be too tired, so I might just sub him right now and give Jesper Grønkjær a chance of debuting at the World Cup like 4 years earlier than he did in the real world. And then Michael Laudrup in the middle. Right. Almost a goal for the other team there. And again, but we got Schmeichel, which makes my chances a lot better in the World Cup because, well, if you've played this game, you'll know that he's one of the best keepers in the world, as he should be, because he was in the real world at the time. So, really, I'm just waiting for about 5 more minutes of game time, match time, right, like this, 75th minute, because then there shouldn't be any more surprises for the rest of the match. I'll just look who's tired, and then I could sub Henriksen, who's done well, pretty well anyway, or Michael Laudrup. So, being that I already used my defensive sub, I'll just go with switching to Bjarne Goldbæk. And then I'll move Brian Laudrup in here. And, well, I actually need to use the mouse. I've got the mouse thing on my layout here as well, because if I touch this one, then I've I've been in the settings and made sure that this counts for a right mouse button click, which I need to make the little arrows. So I'll do that for Brian Laudrup just for fun, to make him sort of a deep lying forward, which would work in the real world and should work here as well. So it's just the end of the match. Getting a little impatient, so I'll just speed up the pace. And there you go, a goal from Goldbæk, Bjarne Goldbæk of Chelsea fame in the real world. Not in this game yet, anyway. So, South Africa will be sorry about this. John Dahl Thomason. He was rated as one of the wonder kids of this game, having been sold to Newcastle, and he famously flopped for them in the real world, and then went on to become a prolific striker for Feyenoord and for the Danish national team. But as you can tell in the game, he's doing really well for Newcastle, and for some reason they thought he was an attacking midfielder probably. But doing well at the World Cup for me as well. So I'm not complaining right now anyway. Argentina beat England in one of the other games, and I've got some returns from suspension, so that's great. Yeah, this was the first run, the first match for the World Cup. I'll be returning with another video for the next match, which will be against Colombia. So, well, if you enjoyed watching this, then probably you should click something. I don't know what to say. See you next time. Let's see if I can actually